Afide, welcome to another episode of Pacific Matters. My name is Tomas Maglonia, and on this episode, we sit down with people who have roots in Rota and Tinian, marking major milestones in their field and industry. First, we sit down with Katie Moussouris, who's the founder and CEO of Luta Security. She's a national leading expert in research security, having worked for Microsoft and the Department of Defense. And as you hear throughout our interview, she does it in tribute to her family and her home island of Rota.
My mom, Anuncia Donicia Songsong Maglonia, was born on Luta, otherwise known as Rota, in the Northern Mariana Islands. And she came to the mainland on an academic scholarship to study biochemistry in Boston, and that's where I was born.
And what got you into this work, computer hacking and entrepreneurship? What was your motivations? And I know in previous talks you mentioned getting your first laptop as well.
Yeah, actually, I'm old enough that it was not a laptop. Laptops did not exist when I was a child, but it was my mom who got me my first computer, and it was a Commodore 64. And, she was a single mom, and she was raising me and my younger sister. And, she had spent a lot of money on that computer, and I thought it was for playing video games. So I asked her if she could buy me more video game cartridges that would plug into this thing. And she said, I can't afford to buy you all these games. Here, it came with this book, learn how to play with it. And it was a programming book. It was on BASIC, the computer language called BASIC, which is also incredibly old. But I taught myself how to program by copying programs from that book and exploring and learning how to make games on my own.
And so you have more than 20 years of experience in the cybersecurity space. I don't even know where to start because you've done so much with regards to this work. Maybe we can start with Luta Security, of course, named after your home island, Luta. Can you tell us how this got started and ultimately also why you decided to call it Luta Security?
Well, calling it Luta was easy. I knew I wanted to name something, about my company after, after my background, and part of my background is Chamorro. So I was actually on Luta when I decided on the name of my company. I had just worked with a different startup company, and we launched Hack the Pentagon, which was the very first program by the US Department of Defense to welcome security reports from hackers. And since I grew up and learned how to hack myself and have been using my hacking powers for defense and for good for more than 2 decades at this point, that was a proud moment, for me. So as I was there on the island, actually to be there for my cousins and my uncle and my aunt, who was, unfortunately, she was passing from ovarian cancer. I knew that I wanted to start something that honored my family and my origins.
And you just mentioned the U.S. government's first bug bounty program, Hack the Pentagon, and also you launched Microsoft's first bug bounty program. For those of us who are not in this world of research vulnerability and bug bounties, can you provide an explanation of what that is?
Absolutely. So all computers and all software has flaws, has bugs in the code. And some of those bugs happen to be security holes. So there are programs called bug bounties that pay rewards, usually cash rewards, to hackers who are being helpful. And, if they see something, say something. They report a security hole to your organization, it's better to thank them, try and fix it, and maybe offer them a little cash bonus for their trouble, as opposed to going after them with legal threats, which is what a lot of organizations do if they don't realize that a hacker is actually trying to be helpful.
And I did also want to ask you about your work with another project. I know you've founded several organizations, well, in addition to the Pay Equity Now and the Magnolia Lab. Can you share about why you decided to found and fund the Magnolia Lab at the Penn State Law?
Absolutely. So we'll sort of go backwards from the Magnolia Lab. I wanted to honor my mom, and she was a scientist. She was a pioneer in vitro fertilization, AKA test tube babies, right? So she was a pioneer in creating, not just creating life in a test tube, but also in some of the techniques that really advanced that field. But she was always underpaid and underpromoted her entire life. And as the sole breadwinner of our family, that that had everything to do with our opportunities growing up, and it wasn't fair. So when I was being underpaid at Microsoft and underpromoted for the work that I was doing there, similarly pioneering work, I knew that I could just sue Microsoft and get some money for myself and call it a day. But I just kept thinking back, to my mom, and I realized that I needed to do something for all the women at Microsoft and beyond. So I started a lawsuit against Microsoft, and I attempted a class action gender discrimination lawsuit against Microsoft on pay and promotion equity. So what that meant was the courts were going to look at the data, look at the evidence, and decide whether or not Microsoft had a pattern or practice of underpaying women. That was what my lawsuit was about. Unfortunately, we weren't granted class status, and that wasn't because of lack of data. The data actually supported our case. It was that at the federal level, and certainly the current Supreme Court in the United States is extremely conservative. At the federal level, you really would have to have a smoking gun of a letter from Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer or Satya Nadella, or maybe all three of them signing it saying, please make sure to pay the women less than the men and promote them less often. So obviously we weren't going to have, some sort of a policy that was written that was coming from the executives that said to do this, but the evidence didn't really lie. And so that kind of brings me to why I created the Pay Equity Now Foundation, because the data shows that pay inequity and promotion inequity, and also hiring and under-leveling at the point of hiring new women and historically excluded minorities from different job roles, the data shows that we're not going to reach pay equity in our lifetimes unless we do something about it now. So I started the Pay Equity Now Foundation. I dropped my lawsuit against Microsoft. I didn't take any of their money, and I didn't sign away my rights to talk about it. So I will continue to talk about it, but there needs to be a change at the legal level. Different states have different laws. And if I, for example, lived in California, when I put in my lawsuit, there's a California law that would have granted the case class status. So there's unequal justice under the law federally right now, which is why I wanted to donate some money to create a law lab that would address some of these issues at the state level and eventually at the federal level. It's certainly illegal to underpay women or any other historically excluded minority, but companies like Microsoft are getting away with it, and it's time for it to stop.
Yes, quite a history there. And this is airing, of course, across social media, but in particular in Guam, the Northern Marianas, and the Pacific. And there might be some people out there who want to get involved in this work and want to climb that ladder that you were speaking of. Uh, what's your advice to someone who wants to get started, but now might not even have a laptop? I know one of the things that you've said in the past that struck me personally was that genius exists in every community, but access and opportunity doesn't. So what's your message to those watching this at any age and at every intersection who want to do similar work?
We are given a number of different opportunities in our life, and it's up to us to take advantage of them. I was lucky. in that my mom took advantage of every opportunity she had, and she gave me every opportunity I could have. So my advice is simply, if you don't have a computer at home right now, sometimes a public library will let you access a computer. If you want to learn about technology, there are classes out there for you that are free. There are YouTube tutorials, things like that. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with how often you can get to a computer with internet access. And I know that that is not exactly equitably distributed either. But if you do have a computer with internet access, and you want to get into technology, find something that is interesting to you and start doing it. You can start with coding at any age. There are exercises that will get you started in the logic of programming if you want. You can go to code.org for some examples and some tutorials step by step, and that's perfect for kids or kids of all ages. If you want to learn to hack and try and make a living as a hacker, hopefully being a hacker for defense, there are a number of different activities that you can try as well. I recommend starting out with competitions called Capture the Flag. It's kind of exactly like Capture the Flag in real life, where you're going after different targets and you're trying to grab these flags, but they're digital targets and you have to hack and solve different puzzles to be able to get those flags. That's a safe way to practice some computer security skills. And then they also have a bunch of different tutorials for what is going to be a hot and growing field in cybersecurity, which is incident response and forensics. It's what do you do when someone has hacked your organization? How do you investigate it? How do you communicate what is going on up your chain of command? And how do you contain that intrusion, and how do you fix it? So there's a number of resources out there, but definitely don't be discouraged, even if today you don't have access to everything that you would want to. Just start with small steps, and some things you can even have access to, and if you have a smartphone.
And Katie, I did want to leave by asking a bigger question with regards to security. I think in particular, the Pacific is in an interesting crossroads, at least strategically as well, when it comes to defense and cybersecurity and things of that nature. We've done reporting on that here in the Marianas. Can we just get your professional opinion looking forward in terms of what how important cybersecurity will play out in the future for us, and given of our the military presence here as well. I mean, maybe not a direct link, but are you able just to share a bit of your insight?
Absolutely. Actually, one of my favorite photos of me at work was a picture of me at a meeting for US Transportation Command. It's the picture that's pinned as the banner photo on top of my Twitter account. And it's me with a bunch of folks in camouflage. I don't know how you could possibly find me in that photo, but somehow you might be able to find me. But one of the things that I think affect all strategic harbors and ports, and certainly the Mariana Islands represent a lot of the challenges that face many different harbors and ports, is that cybersecurity is intertwined with the business of the port, whether it's military business, civilian business, all things having to do with shipping and with notices of arrival of different items. There have definitely been a lot of attacks that take advantage of the fact that the ports have to operate in one manner or another in order for a strategic location to still be strategic. So I do think that overall cybersecurity is intertwined with everything that we do as a society, not just relevant to harbors, strategic ports, military bases, etc. All of us, are forever intertwined at this point in cybersecurity, whether we like it or not, and whether we try and stay off the grid or not. Our information is out there. Our records are kept by various local and federal government levels, and that information needs to be secured. So I do think that there will be jobs for everyone in cybersecurity if they choose to pursue a career in this field. And we've only just begun. The field is very, very young.
All right, that's all the questions I had. I didn't want to open it up for you to add anything on a professional or maybe even personal note, given that this is airing at home. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, it's just that I can't wait to go back home and have a visit and see everybody. And I hope that honestly, you know, I know that we're a very close community, and there aren't that many of us in the world. So I just would hope that folks back home who see that you can make a difference in your chosen field, will be encouraged by some of the work that I've done and some of the work that my mom did.
All right, thank you so much. Welcome back to the show. Before we close out, we wanted to share this story from the island of Tinian, where twins from Tinian, Isa and Cielo, both learned that they got into Harvard. Here's more.
Give me a moment, give me a moment. No, I need a minute to take in all that's different. Give me a moment, give me a moment. No, it'll get brighter.
Isa and Cielo Long are having their moment.
5, no, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Twins from Tinian in deep jubilation after learning they both got into Harvard.
When we got the acceptance, I feel like we both just thought, wow, like our hard work actually paid off, and it was such a good feeling to share with family.
The 17-year-old Chamorro Mexican sisters now have their sights set on Harvard, a long way from home in their class of just 30 students.
Growing up, we didn't really have any APs or honors offered at the high school. It's just not available to us. But we always made sure to go out of our way and make opportunities for ourselves or take online classes. And I feel like in some way it's a disadvantage, but an advantage at the same time, because you learn how to take initiative. And I can say the same for a bunch of other students at Tinian High School. Many of my classmates are extremely resourceful.
They founded an organization to empower youth and women and are heavily involved in their community. They wrote about it in their early action application to college.
Kind of created a narrative for myself that expressed how much my home meant to me and how much I wanted to see it improve, and for our community, economy, all of that. I just wanted to make Tinian and the rest of the CNMI a better place.
They also wrote about each other, sharing in many of their accomplishments growing up.
Especially with our interviews for the university, it was when we mentioned each other and our relationship and the things we were involved in, it was always like, oh, so one's creative, one's analytical, so yeah, you guys kind of balance each other out.
Isa is interested in business and marketing, and Cielo wants to be a lawyer. They still have a few months to decide where to go and are waiting to hear back from other schools, but they're soaking it in, and they're committed to coming back to give back. They want other island kids to know.
This is probably going to sound really cliche, but I feel like to just understand that these things are possible.
And those possibilities are endless, as they sing in their song about pushing through the pandemic.
I know we gotta keep going forward. We just gotta hold on tight. Zeus, Azul, that.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pacific Matters. We'll see you right here next week.